So one thing that can be really helpful in this regard is authorities lists. How many people are LIS students? Nobody. So have people heard of authorities lists? One person, 2 people, 3 people, 4? Okay. All right, so we have a couple of people. So the idea of an authorities list is something that the Library of Congress and libraries have been doing for a long time, where essentially there is a list of, when they're cataloging books, the different subjects that can be used. So the Library of Congress publishes these, there are like 6 or 7 huge red volumes of exactly how you should spell United States minor outlying islands and whether or not it should be US period. And so having these is an amazingly incredible way to sort of make sure that the data entry that catalogers are doing is done in a standardized way as possible. So you only choose subjects from this. And the same thing with authors. There are authorized ways to spell authors' names that make sure that, if we decide we're going to put somebody in the database or in the catalog with their middle initial period or with their middle name spelled out. So then when you're looking through books and you say, oh, I'd like to read some more books by John Dewey, you can click on that and get all of the other books by John Dewey and not just get the third that are John Dewey and then not get the other third that are John Hugh Dewey. So by sort of creating these authorized lists that obviously you want people to be able to go and edit them, but if you create sort of an additional cost to editing these authorities lists, you can then increase the likelihood that people will put things in a standardized way. And so in Google Docs, and I'm pretty sure in Excel, it's very easy to sort of set up validation on a field. You can have a column that either links to another table, so you could have another table of like authorized people names, and then you just say validate this column on column A from the other table, and then when people start typing, they get a drop-down menu, and they can only choose things from that drop-down menu. But then if they need to add something else, they can go to the other table and add it, but they'll have to, but that'll force them to see what other people have added. It'll force them to see that no, we're not putting John Dewey's middle name in. And so that then there's a higher likelihood that people will choose the correct one. Also, there are other sort of more simple ways that you can do this. So even using like a numbered scale, if you have, and we saw this a little bit with the data from Ozone House. On their intake survey, they have, I think, for some like mental health issues and other things, they have a 1 to 5 scale that they rank people on based on these various categories. So by doing that, instead of like having an open list of like potential issues or something like that, it then is much easier to have something that you can run computations on, that you can do analysis. Next point was also just getting everyone in a room and having them sit down and agree can be a big benefit to doing this. So even if everyone just decides that we're going to enter man or woman instead of male or a female, and even have a process to update that so that if people decide to change it, or if you end up working with couples or something like that, to agree that we're going to put like couple in instead of like married or something like that. And then the most important thing is to document these decisions in a place that is accessible and ideally co-located with data entry. If you put it on a server where people have to log in or go and look for it, it's significantly less likely that someone's going to say, oh wait, what are we doing for gender? Are we putting it in this way or this way? If it requires searching through email, logging into something, the likelihood, I think, of someone looking at it probably goes from like, I don't know, more made up data, 70% down to 20%. And so making that as accessible as possible, or even potentially, yeah, please.
Yeah, one trick, if you're doing it with Excel, add another sheet that has your headings listed down, and then explain what each field requires, that options are available, things like that. That way it's documented right within Excel.
Yeah.
It's saved along with it.
Yeah, that's a really great recommendation. And I think that's one of the most important things. The more documentation you can provide, like no one ever, I mean, I guess there are cases where people have been overwhelmed by documentation, but usually that's like how to put together bookshelves and not how to understand what's going on in data. I think people are really good at flipping through documentation and finding the field that they're twist again. So the better you can document it, and like you suggested, putting the documentation right with the data increases the likelihood that people are going to use it correctly. And along these lines, it's also good to have sort of an authoritative location for the data. If you have a spreadsheet that then gets mailed to someone updates it, then it gets mailed to someone else, someone does an analysis, and they're like, oh, I don't know what this field is, we'll just delete this field. The likelihood of things getting messed up increases drastically. So trying to have an authoritative location. If someone is just getting a data dump to do analysis, they shouldn't be working on the sort of authoritative copy of the data. If someone just says, oh, I want to run a report, download the data, send it to them if it's not someone who should be doing the data entry.